What have you done for the environment in the local area?
What have I done for him? My main thing, I suppose, is joining up with transition movement. I've been to several of the transition Belsize, and I think it's a sort of grassroots rediscovery of what actually people can do. I don't happen to drive. I'm a keen cyclist. I think, and I think Camden should be the cycling capital of London. And just on a very basic level, I think we can do a huge amount. I've just done my flat, and the main thing was insulation.
Right.
I think home insulation is one of the biggest scandals in London and in Britain today, and inexcusable. And I bore the cost, but I think actually the state can proactively help.
So you think the state should pay for insulation?
I think we should have Green Energy Home Start Fund, which I think is our sort of Vince commitment,
right? Okay.
Whereby essentially we say if you haven't got the money, we'll lend it and you get it through the Green Bank.
Savings. Yep. Oh, right. What will the Liberal Democrats do to start real reductions in the UK carbon emissions within the next 5 years? So
stop the construction of nuclear power plants would be a start, because actually it's not the nuclear power plant that produces the carbon, it's the construction of it.
Right.
And that's the fundamental problem.
Right.
And also the economy is run on carbon. And car fuel tax is just bonkers, it's so low in the context of how much carbon it produces. And we just have to tax on a principle the polluter pays and tax it out of the economy. So I think if we really were serious now, we could get 100% renewables by 2050. Yeah, and that would be a different world to live in.
That's a great target.
Yeah, it's very real. And I genuinely think it's achievable if we do the money that would otherwise go into nuclear, into renewables now. But we've only got about 2 years left to achieve it.
And will you oppose airport expansion in Britain?
Yes.
Across the scope?
Yes.
So by 2020, what proportion of our electricity would you like to see generated by renewables?
2020, 40% should be possible. 2050, 100%.
Right.
So it's a crucial generational opportunity. That's why this election genuinely matters, because if we make the change now, we get the reward.
On the 24th of February, there was a vote on an amendment to the energy bill to include an emissions performance standard. This would have put a legal limit on Britain's future carbon emissions. The debate was lost by 8 votes. 9 people on the Liberal Democrat front bench failed to turn up for the vote. What does this say about the Lib Dems' commitment to reducing carbon emissions from our power stations?
If I understand the date correctly, most of what I suspect it says is that Lib Dems have marginal seats, and they're all back desperately trying to get their seats because we suffer under the first past the post system. There are loads of votes in Parliament that really matter, but occasionally I think they have to make a choice. We have here an MP whose voting record is the worst in London, and I'm very clear that if I'm elected I would try and reverse that. Now clearly there are individual votes where you say, hang on, if you voted it made a difference. But I suspect that actually when we look at the voting record, if I had a choice between the Lib Dems and the Tories, actually I'd be much more proud of the Lib Dem voting record on this stuff than for the Tories. Yeah, and if it's a crucial vote, then I regret clearly that there were 9 Lib Dems who might have been there. But quite often, and there are very valid reasons. I don't know the specifics of it. I mean, what I don't know is how, was it a 1, 2, 3 line whip, it was a manifesto commitment, then clearly, we would expect people to almost respect that. But there are always, there's always a reason. There's one MP I'm very good friends with, who close member of their family died. I suspect they may be one of those 9 if I look back at it. So it's always difficult, but if votes alone in Parliament change things, then I think it'd be pretty depressing. The reason why I'm so signed up to transition movement is because I think actually Parliament is increasingly irrelevant. I happen to think I can make a choice if I'm elected, but I think the transition movement and local grassroots does far more to change the world for the better, genuinely.
Why is the Liberal Democrat Party committed to increasing use of natural gas for electricity generation? I think that's on a transition basis. Yeah,
the main objective is to get off of the coal fossil fuel process. And I think it's a transitional thing to 2020, I think, that actually will increase gas use during that period while we make the conversion to renewables. I don't think it's a long-term reliance. I'd be worried if it was.
In your manifesto, it just says you're committed to using gas. Won't that mean that you're investing billions of pounds in new gas-fired power stations? And what's the point of doing that when we should be investing that in renewables?
I'm not a specialist in the generation of gas through power stations, so I'd want to check it. But my understanding is it's one of the interim measures that gets us off of gas, coal, fossil fuel and onto renewables. Now I understand it may not be I genuinely think in a debate in Britain over this today, we're running out of time. Every passing year is a crisis, and and the conversation about the Falkland Islands and use of sort of black tar oil fills me with dread. And I suspect, I'm not a gas-fired specialist, but I suspect it's actually that's available now to keep us going, so that we don't have the blackouts that were sort of gloomily referred to.
But you would support the building of new fossil fuel power stations?
Oh God, no.
gas?
I think they're awful things. No. Nuclear fossil fuel power stations. I think they're dreadful things.
Isn't that what this policy is saying?
Well, I think it's because we're at crunch point about the renewables. If we'd done renewables 10, 20 years ago, when it was a very live conversation, everyone's pretending, Tories and Labour pretending it wasn't a live conversation. Renewables have been an option since 1964, and we've done nothing about it. Now, we're leaving it so late now, and our reliance on fuel is so high that actually I guess there's just an interim transition needed. It may not be the perfect solution. It's not the solution I've campaigned for 20 years. I'm genuinely committed to renewables. That's always been my passion.
How do the emissions from gas compare with the emissions from coal?
Well, there's two issues. One is about the import and export and the extent to which you're dragging fuel around the globe. And second is the way in which you extract it to generate it. There are ways of generating gas fuel from electric power stations that don't require the same level of fossil fuel digging. We're into the technicalities of it. I am committed, absolutely 120%, to taking action now that's needed. If there's a way round it without doing gas fossil fuel, absolutely let's do it. But I fear that our energy use is so high now as a country that that's considered to be a sort of interim, undesirable measure that we've got to take.